Hey everybody, Andre here, and today we are going to analyze probably my favorite piano piece of all time, which is the Brahms A major Intermezzo. So the A major Intermezzo is part of six pieces for piano, Opus 118 by Johannes Brahms. He wrote it towards the end of his life, finished it in 1893, and dedicated this set to Clara Schumann. Pretty introspective, I'd say, not as virtuosic as some of his earlier piano music. I believe this set is the second to last group of piano pieces that he composed before he died. And I just, especially this one for me, I've always found this one to be a really special piece, really beautiful, and there's a lot going on in a very tight package here. So, what I'd like to do is present this piece to you, and we're going to do a sort of a broad overview. We're going to do some detail work, but really the goal here, there's two goals to this presentation here. Goal number one is to show you the piece, and the second goal is show you how, what's the process like of analysis, because I feel like many times we're taught the building blocks of music, but then we're sort of left to our own devices on how to actually use those building blocks, those tools, in figuring out pieces on our own time. So I thought we would do that. Okay. A couple of disclaimers. First of all, I'm not going to play this piece for you. So if you haven't heard it yet, go ahead and hit pause and then go check out one of the links that I have in the description below that I think are really great performances of this, that I found on YouTube anyway. I'm sure there are other great performances that are not found on YouTube. But go ahead and listen, because analysis means nothing without the music. You have to experience the music, and I'm a firm believer that you should listen to the piece first, or attempt to play the piece first, whatever is better for you, just to have the sound in your ear. I know some people go the other direction. They want to see the sheet music first and then generate their ideas, but I think that in most cases it's more useful to get it in your ear first. So that's disclaimer number one, that you should go hit pause and then go listen to a recording. Second disclaimer is that I am going to be using some advanced terminology, and maybe in special cases I will go out of the way to explain what some of those things are, but just know that the assumption is that you have a basic understanding of music fundamentals, chords, keys, stuff like that. Okay, so with that out of the way, here is the A major Intermezzo. So, process for doing an analysis. First of all, you have to have the tools. So you have your sheet music. I have an extra little thing for taking notes. You need a straight edge or ruler of some kind. I have my Albert Einstein ruler that I love, but just an important tool in your arsenal to have straight edge. And then some writing utensils. Typically, pencil is good, because if you make a mistake, like I undoubtedly will make a mistake, it's good to be able to erase. And then you can use a pen for more like permanent markings. Okay, so what are the goals here? So I believe in the kind of analysis that's called macro to micro. What that means is just biggest to smallest. So you want to talk about the big picture elements first, and then work your way into the smaller elements. So, for example, that means talking about large form of the whole piece, then going to small form, then going to that means phrase structure, stuff like that. Talking about harmony, talking about rhythm, talking about detail. You'll also find that I'm not going through and analyzing every chord. That's something also that we get in trouble a little bit in music school. You know, you go and you learn all the intro music theory, and it's like, oh, it's a bunch of Roman numerals. Oh my gosh, so I have to do Roman numerals every way. Not the case. You use Roman numerals where appropriate, but in an analysis, I'm not going to go through every chord because it would be rather pointless unless there's a special chord there. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So that's sort of the process here. We're going to go from the biggest to the smallest. And then for detail, what detail means is there some kind of small idea that's present in this piece that returns or presents itself in various ways? So is there a recurring moment or element or idea in the piece that kind of, you know, almost is like the glue? It could be such a small little thing, or it could be a giant thing, but detail. And then there's this idea of departure versus return. So in order for something to depart, it must be presented first. So is there some kind of idea that is presented? Then that idea leaves, and then it comes back somehow, and that's the return. So 3 concepts here. Biggest to smallest, macro to micro. Detail, what's that one thing in the piece that drives it? And then what leaves and what comes back, that's departure versus return. So that's our sort of reminder to ourselves. So we're going to put that aside. Okay, so we're going to move over and begin. So this piece in A major starts on the 3rd beat. Okay, so with this motive, da da da, down a step, up a 3rd, da da da, up a 7th. So we're going to try to find every time that this little small phrase appears. So 1 chord, 4 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 5 chord, da da da. So da da dum, da da dum. We basically have 4-bar phrases here. Just write that down. So da 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 da. Okay. Da 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 da. Another 4-bar phrase. And then again, da 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 da. Da 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 da. So another 4-bar phrase there, and another 4-bar phrase that ends here. Now, right here, notice how there's no more 8th notes, right? There's no da 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 da. There's quarter note motion. So here's the start of something else. So up until this point, there is something happening here. Let's just make sure that we mark the beginning. So I'm going to write a capital A at the beginning. Capital A means that this is the start of the first big section of the piece. And then we're going to come back to the sub phrases in a little while. But we have basically a new thing, da 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 da, and then so that's another 4-bar phrase. We've sort of established 4-bar phrases, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess 4. It goes over the bar line. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then 1, 2, 3, 4 again, going over the bar line. Then 1, 2. We're gonna flip the page. 3, 4. This is kind of an interesting moment right here. Notice how we have the da-da-da. So we're going to come back to this. This is called an elided phrase. But da-da-da-da-da, chromatic line, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da. We've had this da-da-da again. Another 4-bar phrase. We've established 4-bar phrases, so the pattern is pretty good. So, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the upbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where it kind of breaks down a little bit. So da 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 da. So really, we just have a moment here, 2-bar phrase. New music right here. Da 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 da. I'm going kind of fast to get through this. 4-bar phrase. 4-bar phrase. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then new music here. And then double bar. Okay, so I'm gonna go through. I'm gonna go double check all of these in a moment here. What I basically just did was 4-bar phrases following that initial motive, that da 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 da, that motive, and then saw where it changed, and then went through. So basically everything was 4-bar phrases except here and here. Okay, but we're gonna get back to that. Notice a double bar line. This is huge. Okay, notice a big 5/1 cadence right here. 5/1 cadence. E major. 2 A major. And the start of completely new material. So in terms of the macro analysis, right here is the start of the next big section, the B section. Okay, cool. So we have the A section here, and then we have the start of the B section. Start of the B section right here in tempo. Notice how it's a kind of a new texture. Anyway, we're going to come back to this. So let's try to find where this ends. So no, this is triplets. I'm just going to scan through. You know, there's triplet stuff. Okay, we got to go to the next page. It would help to be on the correct page, huh? There we go. This is page 3. Triplet stuff here, and then there's a repeat sign. I'm gonna mark off the repeat sign. Albert's saying, "How could you get the pages mixed up, man?" And then Pulento. So here's another small phrase here. We're gonna come back to this, but notice it looks like very different music. Back to triplets, looking like what we were in before. F sharp minor section here, by the way. Going through. There's a fermata. That's a huge clue. And hey, what's the fermata on? It's on like kind of a cool E chord. But we're gonna talk about that chord in a bit. But then right after the fermata, we have da da da, which is like the beginning. Like the beginning. I'm gonna put them side by side. This is where we just are. Da 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 da. This is the beginning. Da 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 da. Okay, so this is A again. This is the big A section. Now, we're going to have to determine whether it's A, like a complete, total restatement of this, or if it's something different. So let's compare. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Da 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 da. That's the second time, and the first time is da 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 da. So immediately you can tell just by looking at the melody. You don't even have to look at the chords. The melody's different. So it's similar, but it's not. So for that we use the marking A prime. So the overall form of this piece. So the large form, the macro form, large form, is A, B, and then A prime. And what this is called is ternary form. Ternary form is basically a three-part form where you have a statement, then you have a digression or a deviation or something else, and then a return. So this is the example. This is like classic departure versus return. We have A gets established, then departs for a little while in B, and then returns in A, but it's been changed because of the journey that it's been on. Okay, so that's the large form. Now, I did start marking up this first section. So what's the small form? Well, we start in A major, 1 chord, 4 chord, basically. And then at the end of this first phrase, this first 4-bar phrase, we end on this E chord, and E in the key of A is 5 chord. So whenever you have a phrase that ends with a half cadence, when it ends with a 5 chord, it's called a half cadence because it's halfway to tonic. Right? We're almost at tonic. Okay, and then ba da 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 da. Okay, that's kind of interesting. So it ends on an E chord. I'm gonna play. It's another 5 chord. I'm gonna play a slight devil's advocate in a sec here, because with music, there is never one right answer to how you perceive it. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a different way in a moment here. But if we just stick in A major, that's a half cadence in A major. That's another half cadence in A major. 4 bars later, that's another half cadence in A major. And that is another half cadence in A major. So we basically have 4 bar phrases in A major. They all end on half cadences. If that is how you perceive this music, that is what's called a phrase group. A phrase group is exactly what it sounds like. It's a group of phrases that are linked together, that are combined together without a hierarchy of cadence. And what that means is that there's none of these cadences are like stronger than the other. They're all sort of in the same ballpark. So that's what a phrase group means. So I would say this is subphrase A. Now, let's take a closer look, because again, this doesn't tell you the whole story. There's no accidentals here at all. No, very clearly in A major. In this next bit here, notice that there's another accidental being added. There's D sharp. The D sharp is added, which is the leading tone to E major, which adds a 4th sharp to the key signature. So for these next 4 bars, really what it sounds like it's tonicizing E major. It sounds like it's tonicizing E major. If that is the case, then this is not a half cadence anymore, is it? This is a 1 chord. This is a 1 chord, and if it is in fact in E major, then that means that the 3rd beat here, this B major chord, is actually a 5 to that 1, which will make this not a half cadence, but an imperfect authentic cadence. Imperfect meaning that the top note is not the tonic. It's the median in E major. It's the G sharp, excuse me. So in A major, it's a half cadence, but in E major, it's an imperfect. authentic. I see. Just depends on how you hear it. Do you hear this as a change of key? Or do you hear this as a continuation in A with some secondary dominance? It depends. Go ahead and listen. Listen to the piece and see how you perceive it. I don't hear it one way or the other. It depends on the time of day, you know. But there are options. If anybody ever tells you there's only one way to perceive this music, most of the time it's not true. There's going to be other ways to hear it, other ways to feel the music. But in any case, so I'm just giving you devil's advocate. So I've given you in parentheses, you could perceive these 4 bars in E major, and in that case, this cadence would be an imperfect authentic cadence. Same token. So that's, if this is A, then I would say that this here, this thing is A prime. Little a prime. Notice how I'm using big letters for the large form and small letters for the small form. It's really important so that you can keep track of what you're actually talking about. So big A, small a. Fantastic. Small a prime. Now the reason why I'm doing small a prime instead of like a B is because the melody is still like it's the same contour basically. I mean, we have some changes here. We have the same rhythmic stuff. So really the only thing that's changed is the harmony. And that's not really a far enough deviation, really. So that's my justification, but it's totally acceptable if you say this is a little B. But then, clearly here in the pianissimo, where it's the same as the beginning, right? The same exact stuff. So this is A again. Little A. I guess I'm putting this in the wrong spot. This is why I use pencil. It's really here. Little A. And then a little A prime. I'm just going to put this in parentheses. But really it's starting on the 3rd beat. Okay. And then just as before, just in the second 4-bar phrase, here we go back to E major again. So again, you could perceive this in E. This is an A prime. E major. And then you can hear this as an imperfect authentic cadence. So there you go. If you have half cadence, imperfect, authentic, half cadence, imperfect, authentic, that's what's called a period. So basically a period has hierarchy. I guess you have two periods. So you have half cadence, which is less conclusive than an imperfect. So you have less conclusive, more conclusive, less conclusive, more conclusive. But still, I don't really buy that, because either way, even if it's an imperfect authentic cadence, it's still not in the original key. It's still not in the tonic. And then you so quickly go to the tonic key that I really don't hear the hierarchy here. I truly feel them as half cadences. But know that you could justify this as some kind of a period. So, period, maybe, but I don't buy it. Okay, so there's your first subphrase. So in big A, we have phrase group A, oops, I shouldn't do that. A, then A prime, then A, then A prime again. Phrase group, and it will be from measures basically 0, 0.3. The 0.3 just means it's the third beat. So like 0.1, like 1.1 is first beat, 1.2 is the second beat, 1.3 is the third beat. And because we're in 3/4, that's how that works. Okay. So 0.3, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So measure 16.2 because it ends on the second beat here. Probably one of the first things you should do is actually just add measure numbers everywhere. So 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, measure 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So probably the first thing that you should do actually is add measure numbers if they're not already present in your score, because oh gosh, it's so annoying if you like you're looking at an orchestral one, you're counting measure 374 and you like skipped a measure somewhere. Oh god, that sucks. So hopefully you don't have to deal with that. Hopefully they put in the measure numbers. Anyway, so this is like the first big shift here. Right here is the first big shift. Now we have something really different. I would call this B. We're going to come back to the harmony here, but it's a C major harmony. This is so special here. We're going along in A major, kind of E major, and then all of a sudden we have a C major chord, which is totally out of left field. We're going to come back to that. But basically, we have 4 bars of like a small B that ends on a 1 chord. How we get to the 1 chord, we go to the previous chord here, which was a measure of basically 5. Really 2 measures. A measure and change of a 5 chord. But this is an imperfect authentic cadence. It's imperfect authentic because even though we're going 5-1 in the bass, the top part doesn't land on the tonic. It lands on, well, first it lands on the B, which is the supertonic, and then it goes back to goes down to the E, which is the dominant. So not a perfect authentic. This is an IAC. And then again we have B. It is a 4th higher. Check it out. So here we have E, F sharp, E, F sharp, E, B, A, G sharp. Okay, but here we have A, B, A, C, A. So this is slightly different. B prime. Not much has changed except the harmonic context. Very similar to what was going on here, right? Same, pretty much the same music, but just the harmony changed. So B, then B prime. If you were to guess, knowing that each of these cadences was the same, would you guess that each of the cadences here would be similar? Let's find out. Okay, so IAC here. And here we have an A minor 7 chord. Whoa. Are we in A major or are we in A minor? Is that the detail? That could be the detail. So if you're going along and you find that, it's like, whoa, A minor. You write that down for detail. Get a different paper here. Detail. Minor versus major. Or the other way around. Is that what this piece is about? So right here we have a 1 chord or a 1-7, but A minor. Whoa, crazy. So I guess you can call this. Well, where do we come from? We have this G sharp. This is not a G sharp. This is a D sharp. Thank you. D sharp, F sharp, A, C. That's a 7 diminished, 7 fully diminished of 5. 7 fully diminished, 7 of 5 going to a 1. So it's not a normal cadence, but it's kind of like an imperfect authentic cadence because this is kind of a dominant type of chord, and this is definitely a tonic type chord. So really we have another phrase group, another 2-bar phrase group. Okay, so phrase group measures 16.3 to 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24.2. Now I said before that it kind of there's a special name for this. So notice how the music, it doesn't like kind of, there's no resting point. It sort of bleeds over into this. This is what's called an elided cadence. just means that it doesn't end until the next phrase is actually begun. So this part sort of dovetails. So you could, there's a couple of different ways that you can write this out, but one of the ways that I like to do is kind of like this. So really it's telling you that's where that ends, and then this one actually begins here, if that makes any sense. I mean, there's probably a better way to write that in, but so this music here, it goes from there to here and ends, and then this music here goes from there. It's probably a better way to write that in, but I don't know, it works for me. Okay, so then what do we have here? So we have this A minor 7 chord again. So we have G. What am I talking about? Sorry, I'm so sorry. This is an E major chord. E, G sharp, goes to A minor on the 3rd beat. So we start on dominant. Then we have this another kind of dominant pedal. E, 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 E. So this is really 1, 2, 3, 4 bars of an E pedal. And what's happening here? We have this chromatic line. Da, 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 da. This is a transition, isn't it? Transitioning back to something familiar, because what happens here? Da, 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 da. That's the same kind of motive from the beginning. Pitches are a little different. Rhythm is very different. We'll come back to that. But this section here is pretty different than the other stuff that we've seen so far. I mean, it has elements of A, but it doesn't have the rising quarter notes. It just has the opening 2/8. And it doesn't have it has this like cascading 8th note thing going on, but it's not the same. Right? It's not the same. It's actually marked in 6/8, which is kind of interesting in the internal parts. Da, 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 da. Kind of is represented here. But yeah, this part is pretty different. C section. And it's all basically a 5 chord. 5 1 5 1 5 1 5 5 5 5 5 5 7 5, stuff like that. So we have just like elaboration of a 5 chord going on here until we get to here with the D major chord. Just kind of like the beginning, right? The opening phrase, it goes 1 to 4. So really these 4 bars here are pretty tricky. I would call them a C. And then here we have kind of like the beginning, but it's not exactly right. So A double prime. So phrase group here. And then we have kind of like a transition set of measures. Transition from measure 24.3 to measure 28.2. And then we have basically 2 bars here of what kind of looks like A. It kind of looks like A from before. It doesn't keep going though. We have elements. We have elements here. We have da 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 da. Like we have that gesture, but it's very different, isn't it? So yeah, A double prime, restatement of A is measure 28.3 to measure 30.2. That's really quick, in and out, bam. Now, also, there's no real clear cadence here. It's all kind of elided. So there's no clear cadences here. I'm going to write that in. No clear cadences. This might be a clue that this fits in to the structure of the stuff around it. Like, it could be that from here to here is part of the phrase group that we said was from 16 to 24. It's very well possible that this section is combined with that. Or it's very possible that this section from here to here is combined with the next thing. The way that I hear it is I hear this as kind of like the answer to this phrase group. That's how I hear it. So I feel like it's more closely connected with the previous material. And that's more in line with the proportions of the piece, because if you think about it, the first phrase group was about 16 bars long. And then that means that this next one is a little closer. It's about 14, or how's my math? Yeah, about 14 bars long. So it's pretty close to 16. It's not exactly the same, but it's reasonably close in terms of the the proportions. And then from here, I really start to hear kind of like this D pedal going through D, 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 D sharp, okay, and then moving up to E, E, and A. So, yeah, this first little bit here, I would definitely call this a new kind of experience here. So it's similar to A, but I think it's different enough. So you can call it, you can keep track of your primes. So if this is the A double prime section, maybe this is A triple prime, or if you feel like that's getting out of hand, you can say this is just D, subphrase D, which I'm gonna do right now. But again, there's no right way to do it, as long as you're accounting for the information and you're justifying everything. And by the way, all of these little things, all of the little nuances and stuff, you would then put into like a supplementary paper or something like that, because there's only so much information you can put on a score without it just becoming completely illegible and unreadable. So anyway, so da 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 dun da 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 da, 4-bar phrase. Notice the ba da da ba da da ba da da. So this is the opening melody, but it's in the bass line instead of the top voice. And that's pretty cool. That's a little detail there. You see that? So down a step, up a third. Down a step, up a third. That's a little detail. You can find little details like that all over the place, which is really cool. And then da 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 da. This is the inversion. How cool is that? So instead of going down a third and down a step and up a third, now we go up a step and down a third, up a step, down a seventh. So this right here, maybe I'm wrong, I'm super wrong, this is not a D, this really is like A, except stuff is being flipped around. A triple prime. I'm sold on it, man. Okay, so this is too similar. This is just too similar. We got 4 chords, we got 1 chords. So A triple prime, it's too connected. Then that again, except there's an inversion, so A4, a quadruple prime. Some of my theory friends are probably saying, "What are you doing? There's too many primes." But you have to see that it's connected. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's all in one big the first section, but you have just too many similarities. Too many darn similarities. This similarity here, the da 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 da, this one here breaks the similarity because of the 6/8-ness of it and the chromatic ascending line-ness of it. We don't have that here. This is very much in 3/4. Very much in 3/4. And by the way, if you were to listen to this, I really listen to this section. It doesn't sound like 3/4. It's pretty amazing, especially when we get here. Brahms is the master of subtle rhythmic shifts. Okay. And then what does this one kind of look like? Da, 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 da. It's the same as this. Da, 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 da. So there's your B section. So here's A, B. This is triple prime now. And this is B, quadruple prime. So now it all makes sense, right? We're repeating stuff. What departs and what returns. So inside of this big A, it's absolutely incredible. We have actually a mini ternary form. So this idea, I'm going to write it down here for you. Form within form. It's amazing. It really is amazing. So starting from measure 30.3, we have another phrase group. Measure 30.3 until 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 49. So basically until measure 4. Sorry. 48.2. It's another phrase group. And this one is not the same layout, but now this one is A3, A triple prime, A quadruple prime, and then B triple prime, B quadruple prime. So form within a form. You have one section, then you have another section, and then you have another section. Ternary form within the first part of the turning form. It's amazing. It's amazing. So when you, what does this tell you when you're performing the piece or listening to the piece? Well, when you're listening to the piece, I feel like when you perceive the music, you really feel a sense of continuity. So there you go. There you go. That's why there's continuity, because it is so compactly designed. And when you're performing it, you can play into those repetitions, because, you know, how did you play measure 8 or whatever? When that same measure, when it comes back, how is it changed, and how is your performance practice going to change based on, you know, the context of that repetition? So it's just amazing. I think it's just it blows my mind, actually, how concise this is. And we didn't do the cadences, but I mean, this is what's really cool here is that it kind of does that naturalization stuff. But we're going to talk about the harmony in a bit. But this is a phrase group. We have kind of like a 5-1 here. I see. Here we're kind of like, there's this D minor thing, which is a half plagal. Plagal half. Here we have IC, A major. I'm not sure why I drew the line here. Well, I guess there's two extra bars here, but so we have an IC as well here, because this is another A major chord, and then we have a basically a PAC here. How we know it's a perfect authentic is because we have the tonic finally on top. So, well, I guess, you know, IAC, PAC. I hear it more as a PAC because it's towards the end, but I guess it more, if you look at the internal lines, how the staves are, or how the stems are placed. So Brahms really intends for that E to be the high voice, which is kind of interesting. But we really do have 3, 2, 1 here. C sharp, B, A, so immediate, supertonic, tonic. So I guess it's not an IC, this is a PAC. the internal struggle here, the debate. So perhaps this isn't a phrase group after all. Perhaps this is a period, but it's so different, you know. We have plagal half, IAC, IAC, IAC. There is a hierarchy, so. Oh boy. So, is it a period? Let me know in the comments down below whether you think that this should be called a period and not a phrase group. I think it's small potatoes, but I think the most important thing is that you realize just how connected everything is. All right, moving on to the next part. So the B section. Wow, such different music here. We start in F sharp minor. F sharp minor, which is the relative minor, A major. And instead of eighth notes, we have triplets, new melody. We open with a leap of a fourth, stepping down, just lots of arpeggios, more lyrical, sweeping, not more lyrical, but more sweeping melodies. But notice it does still start on the third beat, which is kind of a nice holdover. So really sweeping harmonies that last a little longer. Going to the next page. D major. The cadence here, we end this measure on a C major, C dominant 7, excuse me, C major minor 7. So really this is a 5/7. So that's a half cadence, and then it repeats. So you have half cadence, half cadence. I'm going to write that down. So 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 6, 7, measure 57. So that was the A section. Now we're on to the B section. So we start measures 48.3 to basically to the end of that, right? Measure 56.3. We have basically two phrases that end in a half cadence, and it's repeated. Repeat. Not once, just repeat. Repeats. Okay. And then here we have what I think is just so extraordinary. So extraordinary. Look at these. It's a completely different texture here. All right, quarter notes. Quarter note motion. Notice that the contour is still there, right? We jump up a fourth, work our way down by step. Jump up a fourth, work our way down by step. So it is keeping with the integrity of this section. So I keep losing it. So if this is, let's call this like D. So we got rid of D before, so we can call this a D. And then this is pretty similar still, so this is D prime. But I mean F sharp major. You can see how we go to the parallel major here. We have extra notes here. We have A sharp, we have E sharp, we have D sharp. Those notes don't belong in F sharp minor, except maybe the E sharp. But yeah, that's pretty awesome. Complete shift in texture. There's some harmonic stuff that I want to talk about in a little bit. I just want to get through the form of the B section. But then right here, we end again on a half cadence. It's 5/7 chord, C sharp, E sharp, G sharp, B. And then instead of on the third beat, now we're on the and of 3. That's kind of interesting. So we have another phrase from measure 57.1 to 7, 8, 9, 60, 1, 2, 3, 63, 64.2. I guess you could say point. This is where the system falls apart. Almost 3. Let's say, yeah, let's just say 3. 64.3, because it does go into the third beat, and then we'll address the fact that the other one also starts on the and of 3 in a moment here. But this one, I mean, you can see it's the same thing as before, but instead of being a straight one melody, there's actually 2 melodies happening at the same time. Like there's a canon that's set by a quarter note off, which is kind of amazing. Up a fourth, down a step, up a fourth, down a step, down a step. It's just octaves apart and offset by a dotted quarter note right here, right? So 3/8 notes, and then 3/8 notes later, we have another melody. So I would say that this is D double prime, because it is kind of like that other section. So, and then I forgot to mark right here. I use a ruler and then I miss. I miss. Okay, so there's a F sharp cadence right there. I see. So you have half cadence, I see right here. Next phrase, measure 64.35. Let's call it 3/5 because it is halfway between the next beat. 2, measure 8, 971, 2, 73.2. So this one ended with a half cadence, this one ended with a half cadence, this one ended with an imperfect authentic cadence. This right here, that constitutes a period. It's an irregular period, or asymmetrical period. That's an asymmetrical period. It's asymmetrical because you can't just cut it in half, right? You got 2 phrases that end with a half cadence and only one that ends with an imperfect authentic. But the imperfect authentic is a more conclusive cadence. It sounds more like final, more resolved than a half cadence, because half cadence kind of demands resolution, whereas an imperfect one doesn't necessarily demand resolution. So that's why it's called an asymmetrical period. And then you have some transitional stuff right here, where you cascade upwards, go to this D chord, go to this A chord, and then go to this kind of amazing E harmony. It's not really an E chord. This is like the jazziest chord that Brahms has here. It's really fantastic. But you basically have a little, 3 and change, basically a 4-bar phrase, right? So 1, 2. No, it's sorry, I'm bad at math. We have three measures here. Yeah, 1, 2, and then take this one and this one and combine it. So we have a 3-bar kind of transition. So that's what this is. And it ends on a half cadence. So measure 73 point, again 2/5 because it starts on the and. This is another kind of elided idea. And then goes to measure 76. So you can either think of this as like a separate phrase. That's kind of a transitional, or you can think of these 4 things together as a phrase group. Because if you have this half cadence at the end of that phrase group, then you have half cadence, imperfect, half cadence, then you lose that hierarchy, right? You no longer have the strongest cadence at the end. So, but there's a half cadence in A major. So we're kind of working our way back towards A major. I think that I hear this as period and then just like a separate phrase, like a single phrase. That's what I hear. So I don't necessarily hear this, but it's possible. it's possible, because this really serves as a modulation back to A major. Okay, so that's the B section. So you have your A section, then you have your B section. And then what's really nice about A prime, we don't have to go back over this. It's really, really similar. It's really, really similar, because if you just follow the 4-bar phrases, we're going to have very similar stuff at the beginning. Even though the contour is different in the melody, the integrity of the form remains the same, which is really nice. So 4-bar phrase here, half cadence, another 4-bar phrase that probably, you know, it's tonicizing. It's tonicizing E, goes to. But I mean, again, I hear it as a half cadence. Aha! So, really similar, right? What's the difference? Normally, in a departure versus return situation, you're not going to have it verbatim. So, I misspoke before. I'm so sorry. I hope you can forgive me. In the comments below, you can say, "You misled us. You've said the bad thing." But it's important to acknowledge your mistake. So it's not the same as A. So you have 4-bar phrase, half cadence, 4-bar phrase, half cadence. This thing is really much like A, and this one is really much like A prime. And in the paper, you would note the differences in contour, right? You could say that this is like A5, and this is A6. You could say that, right? Because if you're keeping track. Or, and then this one is much more similar. You don't have a difference here. If you compare and contrast, this is the same exact music. Same exact music as it was before. So these are B, B prime for sure, ends on a IAC, and then again you have that kind of elided cadence thing, just as before. Elided cadence ends on an IAC in A minor. So again, it's very similar stuff, except the one shift is that in the original phrase group we had 4 of these subphrases, but now we only have 2. So here we go. A prime. A prime. We have measures 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Measure 76.3. Measure 76.3. 2, 8, 9, 81, 82. Measure 84.2. That's that original phrase group. Okay? So that's kind of like the phrase group from before without 2 phrases. So it's exactly in half as before. And now here you have another phrase group, measures. So measure 84.3 to measure 92.2. That's like before. And then you have this kind of transition thing that looks exactly like C. Again, it kind of looks like 6/8. Right here you have that callback. What before we called as A double prime, but now we know it as something else. But this kind of looks like A double prime. And then this looks, I mean, exactly. This is right here. It's exactly like the initial music. So A triple prime here, 4-bar phrase, And then this is A4. And then this is B3. And then this is B4. I'm going to come back to this in just a sec here. And then, yeah, and then we have that little phrase at the end. That little tag at the end, too, with that same perfect authentic. So really, the difference between A prime and the first A is just that initial phrase group was, it's just cut in half. So here we have, you know, the transition, measure 92.3 to measure 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 98.2. So there's your transition, and these are linked. I think we decided that before. And then basically from measure 98.3 until the end, which is 900, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, measure 160. That little extra measure at the end. So there you go. There's your form for the piece. Very complicated, but what's really nice is that when you lay it out like this, also it helps with memory, right? And memorizing a piece. If you know that the A and the A prime are going to be really similar, except for the initial phrase group being cut in half, that helps tremendously, right? If you already learned the A, then you have the music memorized for the other part, which is really awesome. How are we doing? Oh, this is turning out to be a very long video, isn't it? But that's okay. This is okay. This is important. I want you to see the process as we do this, okay? I want you to see this process. So we did our large form, A, B, A prime, just ternary form. We did our A, we did our B, then we did our A. We found out that the A section is kind of like a form within a form, kind of like a ternary form in and of itself. Kind of hangs over to here. Now, detail. Okay, so we got the form down. What about the detail? Well, let's talk rhythm first, because rhythm's amazing in Brahms. So the first section of the piece, it starts clearly in 3, and it starts on the 3rd beat, and we are very clearly in triple meter for a while. Down here, we really stretch over bar lines here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we have combinations of threes and sixes. In this transition area, we really start to feel these sweeps that feel more like 6/8. And you could feel this as just 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and, but the clue that it might not actually be 3/4 comes right here in measure 29, when you have dotted quarter note, downbeat. So you really go ahead and listen. It's pretty amazing the way that the bass notes move every 3rd eighth note here, instead of like even moving ahead here, like bass note moves and then moves on the 3rd beat, downbeat, 3rd beat, downbeat, 3rd beat. Here it moves on downbeat and of 2. So that's the rhythmic detail that's important in this piece. When are you in 3/4 and when are you in 6/8? And the 6/8 part really only ever happens when you're just finishing that phrase, when you're finishing that transition, going into the last little bit, like kind of like echo area. So I think that's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. The other rhythmic detail, so we kind of already talked about it, how the B section is in using a lot of triplets and then moving to quarter note motion here. That's a big change. So we have triplets, sweeping melody, quarter note, really vastly different, and then back to that triplets, sweeping stuff with a canonic melody. So that's like the big rhythmic detail in the B section. And then in the last section, very similar to A, it's in 3/4. And then again, in that transition, it starts to go into more of a 6/8 feel. Even in the transition, I mean, you have the roots, the E's here, every third, eighth note, every third, eighth note. So you really hear it as 6/8, culminating in this dotted quarter note section in measure 97. Amazing. So that's rhythmic detail. Now, pitch detail. This one's a little bit more interesting, I think, to me, because there's some hidden stuff. So we're very firmly in A for a while. I mean, I've already shown you a couple of these motives that happen and how there's like an inversion. You know, there's that inversion towards the end of the big A section where instead of going down a step and up a third, it went up a step and then down a third. So we have stuff like that. But there's this idea of mode mixture that's introduced down here. So this C major chord is totally wild compared to A major and E major, because C natural doesn't exist in either of those key areas. So when we have this mode mixture moment, where does C major come from? Well, it's being borrowed from the parallel minor, A major to A minor. So right here we establish that mode mixture is a part of the language of this piece. Okay? So C major is the flat 3 chord, flat third scale degree. And then 4 bars later, we have F major, which is, I mean, it could be like the Neapolitan in E, but in terms of A major, that is the flat 6, because again, it's being borrowed from the parallel minor, A minor. And then what happens? We sort of alluded already. We go through A minor. We go through A minor. And so we have a taste of A minor in this little, towards the end here, we have A minor happening here also when we are doing that snippets of melody. So we introduce mode mixture, and now we say, hey, remember? You remember? Hey, you remember? Yeah, we did some mode mixture before. Here, we do it again. Subtle, just reminders throughout the music that you're not always in the same space. But it doesn't come out of thin air. There is a relationship here. So, flat 3, flat 6, minor 1, minor 1. But what's even more mind-blowing is how that manifests itself in the B section. So, what I think is the most striking part of this piece is definitely this quarter note section. Because when it happens, it is such a different color shift. I mean, really. After all these sweeping melodies and triplet eighths and stuff. And we get to the middle here. A lot of just stagnation. We have F sharp major, then we have A sharp, C sharp, E sharp. So that's a 3 chord. And then we have D sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. That's a 6 chord. So we have basically we have a 1 chord, then we have a 3 chord, then we have a 6 chord. I didn't mean to write it as a major 3, that's my bad. So 1, 3, and 6. 1, 3, and 6. Hey, does that remind you of anything? Remember those mode mixture chords? What were they? They were flat 3 and they were flat 6. So we're already playing with mode mixture, and remember, it went from A major to A minor. Here it's flipped. Now we're going from F sharp minor to F sharp major. You see? Detail. Detail is being carried over from one section to the other. It's amazing. It really is amazing. And we're just sort of toggling between them. So 1 chord, 3 chord, 6 chord, 1 chord, 6 chord, 3 chord, 6 chord. just toggling back and forth. And then all of a sudden, like, what the hell? Why do we have a bunch of flats all of a sudden? Where the hell did that come from? So now we have E flat minor with a C? Okay, so that's not E flat minor. That's C half diminished 7 chord. Whoa. C half diminished 7 chord. Well, first of all, C. That's flat 3 in A major. That's the very first. That was the first note that was kind of like wild in the beginning, and now in the context of this area, it's the first wild note too. Like, this chord is totally crazy. And then what follows it? F. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So we kind of have like a C to F, 5 to 1 kind of thing happening here. But what does this have to do with F sharp major? Goodness. Well, F major, it's the enharmonic, right? You can do enharmonic stuff, or, sorry, I meant to say this A sharp chord. We can do enharmonic, right? A sharp is the same as B flat major. So this is kind of like a 5-1 too. So C to F, that's a 5-1. Then F to B flat, that's another 5-1. So kind of have like a 2-5-1 here. But we have C, and we have F natural, and then we have this. So right here, this is the craziest. This is the craziest part of the piece. When you're listening, really see if you can hear this. It's really, I mean, I keep saying this, but it's amazing. It's amazing. So the detail aspect we introduced in the first part of the piece. We introduced that mode mixture, C natural and then F natural. We established that the 3 chord and the 6 chord are the ones that are kind of being affected. And then lo and behold, those are the 2 chords that are just being represented over and over again here in the opposite way. Instead of going major to minor, now we're going minor to major. And then we have literally a chord progression that sounds like it's from outer space, using those notes, C and F, to facilitate it. I think that is just really mind-blowing. Really mind-blowing. Very, very cool. And then what happens here is we just have a 5-7 to 1 in F sharp major. Right here. And then we reset and go back to these 3-6, 3-6 kind of things. So that's a detail right there. That's a detail. Yeah. And then it gets, it comes back later, right? That same C natural thing. There we go. C natural, F natural, that same thing gets repeated. So, but really right here is that special moment. If I was performing this, I mean, there's a writ right there. I would writ right into that A sharp minor chord. Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. So wow, this video ended up being a little bit longer than I anticipated. And gosh, there's still so much more to talk about here, but I hope this was useful for you. So basically we went from big form to small form. We talked about the small form in great detail. Talked about departure versus return, and we did talk about detail. So, and then we have ABA prime, and then we have our small form as well. So we've learned that this is quite a concise piece of music. well controlled. Nothing is out of place. And it's kind of expected when you're dealing with Brahms. I mean, dude really knew what he was doing. So anyway, I hope that this was enjoyable for you. I hope this was entertaining. Maybe if you don't care about music theory at all and you just wanted to hear some talking, maybe this was relaxing for you as well. But if you find any errors, please do leave some thoughts in the comment section. Consider liking the video, consider subscribing to the channel for more stuff, and I just hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.